My father-in-law left me his house instead of his own son, so my husband tried to forge the will. When Frank died, I expected his son David, my husband of 8 years, to inherit everything. Frank had always been cold to me, barely acknowledging my existence at family dinners. He'd grunt responses to my questions and never once thanked me for the casseroles I brought over. So imagine my shock when the lawyer called on a Tuesday morning while I was folding laundry. Mrs. Morrison, your father-in-law has left you the family estate on Maple Drive, including all contents and financial assets. I dropped the phone. The estate was worth over $2 million. A sprawling Victorian house with 12 rooms, antique furniture, and Frank's classic car collection. David was in the kitchen when I told him, stirring sugar into his coffee like he did every morning for 8 years. His routine was sacred. 2 cups, 3 sugar cubes, never cream. That's impossible, he said, his face going white. The coffee mug slipped from his hands and shattered against the tile floor. Dad would never leave you anything. He barely tolerated you. The reading is tomorrow at 2 p.m., I said, still processing the shock myself. That night, David paced our bedroom like a caged animal. There has to be an explanation. Maybe he was confused from the medications. Maybe someone influenced him. David, your father was sharp until the end. Sharp enough to screw over his only son? The next day, we sat in Mr. Henderson's mahogany-paneled office. David's hands were shaking as the lawyer read the will aloud with deliberate precision. To my daughter-in-law Sarah Morrison, who showed me more genuine kindness in 8 years than my own son showed in 35. I leave my house at 1247 Maple Drive and all its contents, including my investment portfolio valued at $1.2 million. David shot up from his chair like he'd been electrocuted. This is wrong. My father was sick, confused. Sarah manipulated him during those visits. Mr. Henderson adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses calmly. Your father came to me 6 months ago, Mr. Morrison. He was of completely sound mind and very clear about his intentions. But why? David demanded, turning to me with wild eyes. What did you do to him? I thought about all those Tuesday afternoons I'd spent with Frank after his stroke, helping him shower when David claimed he was too busy with work, reading mystery novels to him when David said hospitals made him uncomfortable, sitting through his chemo treatments when David couldn't handle seeing his father weak. I just visited him, I said quietly. David's face twisted with pure rage. We're contesting this. There's no way in hell. Actually, Mr. Henderson interrupted, there's something else your father left. He pulled out a sealed envelope. A letter. He suspected you might challenge the will? David went completely pale. What kind of letter? The lawyer's expression darkened as he scanned the contents. One that explains exactly why he chose your wife over his own son, in very specific detail. David grabbed my arm so hard I winced, his fingers digging into my flesh. We're leaving, right now. In the car, David was silent until we reached a red light on Main Street. Then he turned to me with eyes I'd never seen before, cold and calculating. You're going to sign that house over to me tomorrow. David, I don't think, or I'll make sure you never see a penny of any of it. I'll drag you through court for years. That night, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to find David hunched over his laptop in the dark. On the screen was a PDF of Frank's will, with David's name carefully typed where mine had been. I stood frozen in the doorway of our home office, watching my husband of 8 years forge his father's will. The blue glow of the laptop illuminated David's face, as he meticulously changed every instance of Sarah Elizabeth Morrison to David James Morrison. His tongue was sticking out slightly in concentration, the same expression he wore when balancing our checkbook or assembling IKEA furniture. What are you doing? I whispered into the darkness. He spun around so fast the office chair nearly toppled over, slamming the laptop shut with a sharp crack. Nothing. Go back to bed, Sarah. But I'd seen enough. My hands were shaking as I backed toward the hallway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. David, that's illegal. You could go to prison for forgery. He stood up slowly, unfolding his 6-foot frame, and for the first time in 8 years of marriage, I was genuinely afraid of him. The man who'd cried during our wedding vows, who brought me soup when I had the flu, who'd held me through 3 miscarriages. That man was gone. In his place stood someone I didn't recognize. Nobody's going to prison, he said, his voice eerily calm. You're going to keep your mouth shut, and we're going to submit this corrected version to Henderson tomorrow morning. Corrected version? I stared at him in complete disbelief. David, that's fraud. That's a felony. That's justice! He snapped, his mask slipping for just a moment. I'm his son. I'm his blood. I deserve that house, not some woman who showed up 8 years ago and played nursemaid to get into his will. The cruelty in his voice hit me like a physical blow. This was a man who'd promised to love and protect me through sickness and health, who'd held me while I sobbed about my own father's sudden heart attack 2 years ago, who'd convinced me that his family's coldness toward me didn't matter because we had each other. Your father was completely clear about what he wanted, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. David laughed, but there was no humor in it, just bitter resentment that seemed to have been festering for decades. My father was a senile old man who you systematically manipulated. Those precious Tuesday visits? I know exactly what you were really doing. Whispering poison in his ear, turning him against his own son, making yourself indispensable so he'd remember you in his will. I was taking care of him because you wouldn't, I shot back. I had a job. I had real responsibilities. I couldn't just drop everything to play caregiver like some unemployed housewife. The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. I had quit my teaching job 3 years ago when David convinced me we didn't need 2 incomes, that he wanted to take care of me. Now I realized it had been about control, not love. He was dying, David. He needed his family. David's face twisted with years of suppressed rage. Don't you dare lecture me about family. You have no idea what it was like growing up with that man. The constant criticism, the impossible standards. The way nothing I ever did was good enough. Perfect grades weren't enough. Making varsity wasn't enough. Getting into law school wasn't enough. He always found something wrong, something to nitpick. So you abandoned him when he needed you most? I protected myself from his toxic bullshit, Something you wouldn't understand with your perfect little family where everyone actually loved each other. The irony wasn't lost on me. David had always resented my close relationship with my parents, making snide comments about how some people had it easy. Yet he couldn't understand why his father chose someone who actually showed him kindness. I turned to leave, planning to grab my phone and call Mr. Henderson immediately, but David's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with bruising force. Where do you think you're going? To call the lawyer and tell him what you're doing. His grip tightened until I gasped in pain, his fingers like a vice around my bones. You're not calling anyone. We're going to fix this together tomorrow. You're going to smile and apologize for the confusion, explain that you were emotional and misunderstood Frank's intentions, and we're going to submit the real will. Let go of me, David. Promise me first, Sarah. Promise me you won't say anything. I'm not promising anything. This is insane. He twisted my wrist until tears sprang to my eyes, the pain shooting up my arm. Promise me, or I'll make your life a living hell. I'll contest the will anyway and drag you through court for years. I'll tell everyone you seduced my dying father for his money. I'll hire investigators to dig up every embarrassing thing about your past. I'll make sure you never see a penny of that inheritance. Nobody would believe that, I said, but doubt was creeping in. Really? A young wife who conveniently shows up every Tuesday when the vulnerable old man is alone and confused? Who suddenly inherits everything while his devoted son gets nothing? What do you think that would look like to a jury? Especially when I tell them about all those times you encouraged him to change his medications, all those private conversations behind closed doors. I stared at him, realizing with crystal clarity that I was married to a complete stranger. 8 years, and I'd never truly known this man. This isn't you, David. This isn't who you are. This is exactly who I am, he said coldly. You just never bothered to pay attention. You were too busy playing the perfect wife, weren't you? He finally released my wrist, leaving angry red marks that were already starting to bruise. We'll leave for Henderson's office at 1:30 tomorrow. Wear something nice. That blue dress I bought you for your birthday. Look respectable. And Sarah? His smile was ice cold. If you even think about betraying me, remember that I know where you sleep every single night. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. Cross me on this, and you'll regret it for the rest of your life. I locked myself in our guest bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, my mind racing in circles. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never seen this side of him. The calculated manipulation, the casual threats, the willingness to use physical force. How had I missed all the signs? But as I replayed our entire relationship with new eyes, the red flags had been there from the beginning. The way he'd gradually isolated me from my college friends, claiming they were jealous of our happiness and didn't really understand our relationship. How he'd convinced me to quit my teaching job, saying he made enough money and wanted to take care of me, but really removing my financial independence. The subtle criticisms disguised as loving concern. The way he'd make me feel guilty for wanting to visit my own parents, claiming I was choosing them over him. I'd mistaken control for protection, possessiveness for love. At 3:17 a.m., I crept out of the bathroom as quietly as possible. David was snoring loudly in our bedroom, the laptop closed on his nightstand like evidence waiting to be destroyed. I tiptoed to the kitchen and called the one person I